Whew, that's getting emotional. Wow, I would never have expected to sit here when I came the first time to Chaumont. So thanks so much to the institution, to Lesinia, Jean-Michel, Marina for giving me so many opportunities. And I'm really excited to be here and also to meet all the students. Thank you very much. So for this lecture, I usually do it that way, that I bring my toolbox that is packed with some dirty, noisy media, undisciplined graphic design methods, and also a messy design history. You could say that in my self-initiated projects, I engage with feminist issues. And in my commissioned work, I work at the intersection of graphic design, art, and music. And I also do commissioned work in the cultural field. But I have to say that actually my whole practice has developed in subcultural and alternative club spaces. So for me, I have to calm down a bit. For me, tools in graphic design include, on the one hand, my dearly beloved design principles, such as D for dirty typography. This two-sided practice of reading and writing is directly inscribed in the work typography. To expand on these binary qualities, I've added the attribution dirty to my typography. Obviously, dirty refers to a lot of things, like something is bad, naughty, not clean, or not good. And the dirty reference is actually borrowed from the textile designer and researcher and author Marianne van Helvoet. She graduated from the Rietveld Academy in Amsterdam with the research topic Dirty Design and called for an appreciation of the ambiguous, the fuzzy, and the subjective. The dirty side of typography, in my case, aims to reveal ambiguous ways of reading and writing, to enable relational, fragmented, but also embodied and processual typographic translations. So methods I use to become dirty is usually when I get a text, also an acoustic transcription of the text, a rewriting, but also a deliberate misreading, looking for misunderstandings and many more. So what you see right here in the back is a slide about, it's a brief manual on dirty typography, where I also talk with my digital tools that I use in my process, that was published in a German design magazine. And so, yeah, maybe that's kind of the start where I come from. S for simultaneousness, I would describe this tool as an attempt to find uncommon ways of dealing with hierarchies in design and to resist the expectation that designers per se create order and prioritize visually. Collecting and reusing, deconstructing, and collaging different materials describe my eclectic design practice. Simultaneousness is a process of visual translation, retranslation, and repetition in order to entangle connections, contrasts, and contradictions. So as you might see, I also really have a passion to that the foreground and the background come closer to each other, or sometimes be both at the same time. Due was a weekly publication that explored the impact of urgent contemporary issues on architecture, and it was edited and published by the students of the AA school in London and we published it from 2016 until 2019. Each week I received a text by the students, and that was then published online and also printed as a riso print, and they just throw it into the art school. And due to the short deadline, I only had a few hours to design the text they sent me, but they gave me all the freedom. So it was really, I think like a 5-hour exercise where I designed all these texts because the budget was low, it had to go fast. But it was really amazing to have this challenge to go through this text really quick and also find my own methods to go through. So after the typography and the ways of how to deal with typography and graphics, in addition to that, I also have a fascination for typographic strategies to design. And of course, I can't avoid an enthusiasm about typefaces characters and signs. Like this one here, it's the interior bang that combines the function of the question mark and the exclamation mark. You won't find that in the glyph set of all typefaces, but some are there that have the interior bang. So yeah, something you could attach to the interior bang would be a sentence or a question like, "You're here?" At the beginning of 2021, I held an interim professorship for typography at the Academy of Fine Arts in Leipzig for 2 years. Here in the back, you see some works of the students I was working with for 2 years. And while I was teaching there, the curator of the art school gallery invited me together with the students and also other professors from other departments to discuss the university constitution after the pandemic to realize a joint project. So here you see the Academy of Fine Arts in Leipzig. As part of a many-headed team, we decided to connect the entrance area of the school, the atrium, and the art school gallery through design and artistic interventions to realize a project that is called Radical Receptionist. Radical Receptionist stands for a spatial performative intervention connecting these two central spaces of the art school with a score of rehearsal-like events and teaching formats. So first, we jointly invited the different classes to move their meetings and all the planned program to these rooms, so into the public center of the art school, on the condition that they would arrange to meet with another class. It was not intended that they would have solo activities there. It was really also to make an encounter with somebody else from the department or maybe from the staff or whatever. So the architecture of the school, I mean, it's super beautiful, but it's also heavy. Like students sometimes feel you cannot see behind the doors what's happening. And we really had the feeling like using the entrance area of the school, but also the gallery can maybe change the condition after the pandemic, where we all kind of became also hesitant, more shy to be there. So in collaboration with the student Hagen Tanneberger, we designed the communication assets that showed the already organized program. So we had already to pre-program some stuff that people also felt like, yeah, maybe I also want to participate. And for the communication, we also tried to show the free time slots as well as the inventory with which we equipped the rooms of the Radical Receptionist as a toolbox for the different encounters needed. And the interior bank just suited perfectly the function of the Radical Receptionist, "You're here." We built a two-channel screen installation at the main entrance to continuously update the program as an invitation also to take over the space. We used these great aluminium constructions by the performance artist and at that time also Professor Isabel Lewis, and covered them with these interior bang graphics that we designed as movable furniture or walls that could have been used in these two rooms. And it was around Christmas in winter, so we were all hanging out on eBay to find free furniture to get it from the neighborhood and to put it into the school. And the students, there's like a gallery team, they really had this wish to install this light ceiling across the two rooms, which was adjustable in terms of lighting mood, and added a vertical gray cover to connect these two rooms. Because like in the academy, like you really feel really small because of the architecture. So this kind of light ceiling was also a way to make it a bit more cozy. And of course, we also provided a plug-and-play station. And my favorite work actually at the Radical Receptionist is the Lobby Stranger, I call it. But actually it's an artwork from the fantastic artist and professor Anne Speyer that's called Feeling the Contemporary. It's a tongue that starts licking on the wall. And then we also had a service agreement that fluttered in the back of the entrance that was ready for takeovers and additions by the audience. Along its open and expandable score, the Radical Receptionist invited the art school to intensify their non-sovereign relations vis-à-vis supposedly established belongings And many student-run events, but also staff meetings, class discussions took place right in the middle of the school at the entrance. And I think it really changed, after this 2 years of pandemic situation, it really tried to bring the people closer together. But tools for me also provide an insight into my canon and into the production of knowledge. And in my toolbox, you will also find a text which I always bring to my classes. M for messy history is here the working term. And this refers to an article by Martha Scottford, which was written in 1994. And it's called Toward an Expanded View of Women in Graphic Design, Messy History versus Neat History. Scottford challenges the depiction of history in neatly sorted boxes, linear epochs, and exceptional individual accomplishments, while lamenting the reluctance to introduce unfitting figures into the history of design, giving the self-referential tendency in mainstream design history and its preoccupation with previously canonized biographies. She demythologizes design work, which has always been collaborative, and pleads for the discussion of collective efforts and relationships in the design process, of taking a stand in between clients and society, as well as maintaining dialogue with everyone involved. The title of her essay summarizes the comparison between neat history as an expression of conventional history and messy history as a rebellious inscription of everyday visual culture, non-normative, personal, and expressive design activities far removed from large production ones. Scottford's article does not only demand to add female designers to the canon and their achievements to the design history, so it's also overall rethinking, like, what do we consider as design, and that we start writing about it and about its history. She also demands that we also recognize how the normative concepts of previous designers do not correspond to the experience of the deficient others and structurally disadvantage them. And it was probably Martha Scottford who consciously led me to Sheila Levrang de Bretteville. So I'm a huge fangirl of Sheila and her methods of U for unstable signs. And this tool is actually, it's a tool, it's a design strategy that is borrowed from the US graphic designer Sheila Levrang de Bretteville. Her practice is influenced by the political activism and the women's movement of the 60s, 70s in the US. Later, she became a professor at the Yale School of Art. I think right now she is not running anymore the department, but she did it for really many years. And I thought it's nice to bring Sheila with me, and let's listen to her.
There had been a group called Super Studio who were architects in Milan who they did a series of cautionary tales about the future. And they also did one optimistic one. The cautionary tales are far more articulate because you really see like New York City of brains, only left over our brains, all in their own capsule, isolated from each other, all stacked up and some kind of thing. So they made these images, and then they made another one in which there's a landscape of a grid, a perspective grid, in which sort of two people with long hair, indeterminate sexuality, are walking into the future, and they wrote that grid was the equal distribution of goods and services. So for me, that kind of perspective grid that you see in the Women in Design poster is really, for me, references back the equal distribution of goods and services. But only people who know about Super Studio look at that poster and say, doesn't that have something to do with Super Studio? Da, da, da. I said, yes, but you happen to know about Super Studio. If you don't, it's a grid, it's a perspective. Right. I think most of the things in that poster are unstable signs, because unless you know the moon is Angelica Kaufman's painting of design inspired by poetry. But unless you know that painting, that rondo, you see it's two women sort of very classically dressed, sitting together, having a conversation. There's a lot in it, but I think if you look at it, you see a landscape. And you see a moon, because it's the phases of the moon. And you see eye bolts moving in the landscape, and you see a bunch of palm trees there. So you could make your own story in a way out of that that would be different than the story I tell myself about what I'm doing.
Sheila Lebrun-de-Bretteville articulates the intention to consciously integrate personal image associations into her work while also recognizing and embracing reinterpretation by the viewer, also giving agency back to the viewer and the audience, making it a reason for design, a plea to leave the established role of the enlightened in graphic design behind. When I created the design for the Digital Feminism Festival in 2018, it's quite long ago, a festival that explores the emancipatory potentials and of technology and feminism, I also worked with various unstable signs, as I do also now. And I interpret, here you could say, I interpret these references as references for care work, skill sharing, amplifying voices, referring back to all earlier feminist voices. But you also can read these signs in other ways. To me, the poster is also a tribute to Sheila and her eyebolt, to kind of, yeah, try to get something back from history and embed it into the present. The things we do create do not emerge in a vacuum, but they are influenced by encounters and experiences. In summer of 2023, I did a trip through New Mexico in the US, and I got to know more about the American painter Georgia O'Keeffe. She's known for her opulent landscapes, paintings from New Mexico, which depict vast emptiness, and her fascinating close-up of plants, which verge on surreal abstraction. And it was by accident, precisely during that trip, that I received a request from my dear good friends, Christoph Knot and Konrad Renner, who had been approached by Sonic Acts, an institution in Amsterdam, to design a larger campaign for their biennial celebrating their 30th anniversary. Sonic Acts is an interdisciplinary arts organization based in Amsterdam, and staying within an ecological framework and embracing the urgency of rethinking relations across species. Sonic Acts Biennial 2024 turns for inspiration to and takes its name from David Abrams' book, The Spell of the Senses. The graphic design concept that the three of us developed together serves as a vehicle for exploring the nuances of human perception. The concept focuses on discovering vitality, vibrancy, and in the connections within nature and the environment. This shift urges the viewer to understand communication as an embodiment of physical and sensory experiences, pushing beyond the abstraction of language. The concept calls for also recognizing diverse interactions that go beyond human-centered exchange and dialogue. This concept is largely inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe's paintings. On the next slide, I will show you the trailer for the Biennial, and which we executed in collaboration with the great designer Nelly Nakahara. You will know more about her just in a few minutes. And you will see the screencast of the website, which is quite interesting, as Christoph and Konrad, they come from the background of graphic design and also coding. And to me, they really do a brilliant work to entangle these two worlds even more. So the main design elements that you can see here are these semic signs, like signs that look like letters, but actually they carry no meaning, more a gesture. And you see this breathing typography of the sonic acts. And also, I would say, observational typographic layout on the micro typography level, and also this table as a gesture of documentation. And then, of course, you see these species that can be discovered and awakened via the interactions, while the user can also observe sleepy creatures at the same time. And I just mentioned that I was in the US, inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe, and actually the reason for that journey was the exhibition of the brilliant comic artist and my dear friend and best studio mate, Anna Haifisch. Anna and I met 10 years ago by chance because we happened to rent the same studio. And last year, Anna was given the opportunity to realize a large solo exhibition at the museum in Hamburg. And as part of this show, she invited me to co-develop the exhibition, designing an architectural setting and also the exhibition design. But the best part of this whole collaboration was actually that she invited me to do a new work together specifically for the exhibition. So we went to the US to find actually the Roadrunner, the real bird, the Roadrunner, but also follow the traces of the Looney Tunes character, the Roadrunner. And we made a new silkscreen series that we called the Billboards. Billboards, not billboards. The billboard spaces of American highways served as a model for this expansive homage to the Roadrunner, the great art of billboards and the architectural classics learning from Las Vegas. The work consists of a series of 3 screen prints that panning the ordinary, that you see here on the left, a comic about learning from Las Vegas about Robert Venturi and Denise Scott Brown, and significant animals and architecture, and a haiku, finally a desert drama in a haiku form, a life-threatening encounter beneath a billboard. And then there is this third poster, Lost, the search for the Roadrunners and speculations about its appearance. So I'm super thankful to the jury and to Licinia that we can show these posters here again at the International Poster Competition. Yeah. And while I was preparing that talk, I also got really emotional because I really realized that everything actually started for me here in Chaumont with a poster that you can see on the left side. It was in 2017, as Marina mentioned. I dared to submit a poster for the international competition in Chaumont for the first time. And I was so lucky that the jury selected the poster. And 2 years later, in 2019, I was given the opportunity to also host a workshop during the Biennial. I think it was probably because of this poster. So I was super excited. I'm super excited to see what the students did this year in the workshops. I know it's intense, but also you leave Chaumont with so much joy about graphic design. Yeah, I can't wait to see that. And I thought 1 year later, Jean-Michel and Marina were joking when they told me, yeah, maybe we'd like to invite you for an exhibition to present your work at Licinia. And of course, my heart sank, realizing an exhibition in this huge institutional space where I had previously seen the most technically and visually refined posters and graphic design. So I can't stress enough how rare opportunities like this are for designers after graduating to continue discussing design, arguing about it, exploring archives, and uncovering also historical references. I'm very grateful that I have been able to return with my work again and again and to meet so many people who care just deeply about these things like graphic design like I do. So thanks so much to Licinia. And of course, I was also thinking that Jean-Michel and Marina were joking when they said like, hey, and what about the biennial identity? Would you do it? And I was like, ooh, okay. So you also get really nervous, surrounded by so many great designers. And if I would give a working term to the campaign, I would call it under the term non-linearity. Which is closely tied to the tools and methods I use in my own practice. But before I dive into the campaign concept, I think especially a campaign dealing with noise can't be created by just one person. It takes more than one voice to start a heated discussion or to create true polyphony, as noise does. So for the visual concept and execution of the design, I invited two designers to collaborate with me, Nelly Nakahara and Gerrit Brox. They are also here in the first row. And even though I'm doing this lecture here on my own, you should definitely check out their work. They are amazing designers. We met when they were studying at the Academy of Fine Arts, and I was just looking for an opportunity to work with them. And yeah, and I think like this whole visual language would not have been the same as yeah, the three of us coming together and also coming with quite different ideas and methods towards design. So the starting point for the design concept of the Biennial is the theme noise. As Jean-Michel explains in his introduction, this term encompasses numerous layers of meaning. On the one hand, it represents discontinuity, the idea that history cannot be viewed as a linear continuum, but rather as a network of diverse forms of expressions and narratives that are yet to be fully understood. On the other hand, noise refers also to the constant emergence and transformation of things, some of which have never entered the historical record. Furthermore, noise symbolizes also disruption or interruption, which can serve as a catalyst for new movements and modes of expressions. Especially in our field, noise also highlights the dynamic relationship between music and visual interpretation, whether through collaboration or maybe also coincidental outcomes of the encounters between musicians, artists, and designers. And finally, the term carries also the dimension of noise in the literal sense, a form of expression that often gains significance only through conflict and confrontation. So we came up with these three working methods: A for interpretation and transcription, B for disruption and division to gain a kind of discontinuity or a nonlinear friction, and also the method of disturbance. So let's go through these different methods. The campaign brings together various design approaches that are guided by the concept of interpretation and transcription. So both of these concepts are, yeah, really closely connected to music, right? In the campaign, we interpret and transcribe noise to explore and redefine its meaning on multiple levels. So interpretation can be understood as the sum or rather the overall picture of all the nuances and inflections that emerge during the performance of a piece of music. In music, interpretation primarily refers to the execution or presentation of a composition by the interpreters, who in this context are we, the designers. The interpretation differs from the original piece and can be understood as a subjective gesture. So first of all, we came up with the interpretation of noise as a fictitious playlist. This playlist consists of two sides similar to the presentation on a cassette or vinyl disc, which also have two sides. The two playlists contain different numbers of tracks, which also tell a story through their reading. The songs are represented in multiple languages: German, English, and French. They draw on elements from the curatorial statement by Jean-Michel Guéridin, translate the sounds of everyday noises into onomatopoeia, quote from lyrics like the great musician Sophie or references to FX Twin, use phonetic retranscriptions, reference musical instruments, and explicitly also relate to the exhibition noise. This visual presentation has a really reduced design and focuses on the typographic staging of the title, noise, and the playlist. So for us here, it was interesting to do a really simplified version of the composition. In music, you also have, when you're related to graphic design, the notion of transcription. So transferring a hard piece into a written matter, whether a simple melody or a complex orchestral score. And in this process, I think it was interesting for us to look at what if we just think about noise or listen to noise, and how can we interpret the structure, the harmony, the rhythm, and also the technique of the compositions and the performers. So we looked at numerous notations and tried to discover a concept for ourselves, where we give also the graphic material certain characteristics to listen to noise, and then trying to make a compositions out of it. So this visual outcome is way more abstract. I mean, you can, if you would replay that in your way, it will might not listen as what we have listened to. So to sum that up, we have now both these quite different outcomes, and we were excited already about this contrast. And based on the definition of the theme noise, we proposed using the method of division and disruption as a central principle of the campaign, to deliberately create fiction and find a way to combine these methods. So the friction arises from the intentional displacement and combination of these two outcomes. The method of division consciously interrupts the design process and simultaneously breaks with the linear storytelling. The design composition are intentionally disrupted by a concise presentation of the program. This allows us to communicate also the complexity of the biennial program and highlighting the diversity of events, which I always felt from an audience from abroad. If you've never been to the biennial, you do not really know, like, what can you imagine? So it was kind of interesting to us to say, let's put all the program on the poster as well. So we had these three elements, and this approach results in an eclectic design that brings together various visual languages, and doing so, noise or perhaps even conflict becomes an integral design element. But noise is also or actually present everywhere at all times. Remember the German Autobahn and Kraftwerk? The egg timer on the weekends? Or hanging out in front of the supermarket and there are 3 tiny dogs barking? Or several loud bangs emanating from the neighborhood building? Or a mosquito buzzing around our ears? The hum of an aging refrigerator and the ticking of the clock accompanying our thoughts on the visual concept. That's my office clock that was annoying us all the time. So these sounds disrupt, distract, or break through the oppressive silence. And based on these observations, we incorporated a variety of disruptive sounds into the campaign. These are designed as simplified graphics in different styles and aligned with the color scheme. They disrupt the content in a playful manner and appear as varied as the sounds they represent. So to give you an overall picture, we then really try to push the animation, which is actually done by Nelly, like she's our animation geek, really trying to push even that conflicting sides and this polyphony between the visual material through the animation. And also this kind of story gave us a lot of material for the toolbox to make a narration about the biennial that's maybe more linguistic based or maybe more notation based, and also give us a strategy to work with the program through the social media assets, and also gave us the opportunity to really play on a variety with elements for the animation. And it also gave us then back this notation, an opportunity to work with special program templates that Lessini could use by themselves. So done that, we came to the next big riddle that we needed to solve, the biennial catalog. In relation to this year biennial theme, we said like, yeah, maybe we should not make a catalog. I mean, I understand this idea of having a catalog that is really, really shows the value and really pushes also that it's a really delicate book object. But we thought like it's a biennial about noise, it's about music, it's about collaboration, and yeah, then we thought, yeah, we really need to go for a different format. And I mean, I myself, like, I think I also found my way into graphic design because I was so much always attached to music, and music magazines, fanzines were really important. So that was actually our first step, to say like, we need a larger format and we would like to produce it in a way of a magazine. And thinking about music magazines, I mean, I grew up with music magazines that were really written by a bunch of nerds, and you could also see that in the design, that each article looked different, following an individual visible language, and also always reacting in the graphic design to the current society issues, and not just having like this corporate uniform look. So so we made a page plan first of all before we designed everything, and we were looking like, how can we make this layer of disruption also visible in the design, but how can we also find a common thread that leads you through the whole publication? And that was actually the poster competition, that we thought from the beginning on, we need to spread that over the whole catalog. And but we also thought we want to have pages that are really large, that we could put multiple posters on it, because we think like when you go into public, you just not see one poster, and you really see them in neighborhood to each other, and that makes it also so interesting. So we were really happy about the big format also, that we could push to show them together in a polyphony and not just on their own. So, and also somehow they feel also like tiny ads going through the whole catalog. And of course, we use the playlist and the noise icons also to get rhythm and to say, hey, here it starts and this is now the end. And we decided on some parameters, especially for the institutional text that would pop up all the time again. And but we also wanted that you could just open the book and say, okay, I just go for that article, and then I put it away, and I dive into that later in. So here you see everything that is green is kind of connected also to the institutional text. And in between all these posters, we hided the article by about the jury competition. And so that was also interesting for us as free designers in this process, that we could also take over different designs and really work also from different angles, and not just try to generate one uniform language. Yeah. And also, yeah, I think it's also an homage, because we were so excited thinking about what we will see here. So for us, it was also an homage to all the great exhibitions that we would see here. So we really tried to dive in also in what we would see, and try to push that also in the catalog level. So so I hope you got a little glimpse into the visual concept. And I think Nelly, Gerrit, and I would really like to thank Marina, Boris, and also Clément very much for all their great work in the communication process and get everything together. So I mean, the graphic design is one part, but you also need an institution that really cares and tries to get the material. So thank you very much for that as well. Yeah. Yeah, we have 12 more minutes left, so I go on. When I talk about music, many of my clients and collaborators come from the field of music. Since 2018, I'm collaborating with the graphic designer Jim Kühnel for the Rewire Festival, which is an avant-garde music festival based in the Netherlands. Here you see the identity of this year. And for the visual concept of Rewire 2025, we referred to the annual theme Ears to the Ground, based on the auditory approaches of the musicians in focus for 2025, which mainly work in the field of field recording. We, as designers, translated this concept into a very literal visual strategy. We moved into the public space to explore and document traces and imprints and testimonies as repositories of past and current stories. Instead of ears to the ground, we called our concept eyes to the ground, using various techniques like the frostage, dusting methods, rear scanning, as well as painterly gestures like watercolor. We uncovered, reconstructed, and documented imprints, just like a visual field recording. And even just the traces on the street in our immediate surroundings have taken on an entirely new identity through the design process, an identity that finds its way back into the public space and extends across a wide range of media, just to give you another idea of a visual translation process. But back to my toolkit. Tools also refer to models of work and collaboration, such as R for row split. From the very beginning, I found myself in my practice in a kind of row split. Cultural production, especially in counterculture and alternative club spaces, led me to graphic design. And only through planning and curating event concepts did I also become the designer of those concepts. So here you see the Balance Festival, a festival that I organized and curated with a bunch of friends for several years. This website was built by the studio Anfang. And here you see a new project that we are running. It's called Riddle. It's really ambient, so I would just continue to talk. We will host a new edition this year, and the website is done in collaboration with Jonas Hohlfeld. I believe it's precisely these self-initiated projects that have allowed my work to gain visibility, because I make all the design decisions myself, and I can work in a much more progressive and experimental way. But I think, that's actually 20% of the time that I have for a project like that, because the reality looks actually like that. So I have professionalized myself in writing funding applications and developed a crush on Excel sheets to make these concepts financially more stable, managing all the parallel workflows. So as a designer, I love sorting things and creating structures. But that can be also really annoying. You also see here the media plan for the Biennial and all that. But I think it's kind of important to, if you want to have projects that really mean something to you, then you maybe have to do them yourself. And there are multiple ways, even though we are going into times where cultural funding becomes less. But I think, I think everything what I have done would not have been possible without doing it myself with a bunch of friends and, organizing it, not on an institutional level, then next to it. I have a fondness for P for porous media. My design process is a constant navigation between knowledge and not knowing, to seek out new carriers of narratives and to connect these media across different paths. This can be a towel collection which seeks a public space for a feminist essay and then circulates back into the internet outskirts or into the exhibition space. Or it could also involve the conception of a key visual that translates from a two-dimensional design into a spatial form. I'm constantly looking for unconventional porous media that are not part of my daily repertoire. And one of that project that comes to my mind when I think about porous media is the Gay Area Telephone Directory. It's a queer directory that features listings and classified ads for LGBTQIA+ friendly businesses. It was published by Gay International Inc. in 1983, at a time when such visibility was rare and potentially dangerous. The AIDS crisis in the US and the whole community got stigmatized and discriminated. This book is kind of safer space. In terms of typography, it's enormously rich. And one project that I did that is very much inspired by that book is Whose Agency? In 2018, I received an award from a art institution in Leipzig, and actually the prize was to do an exhibition there, which gave me a huge headache because I thought like, I'm not sure if it makes sense to bring my posters there. So I tried to conceive a new commission from that, from this prize, and I understood the institution as a space to become public, the space of the institution as a publication. So I discussed together with the director of the institution which spaces of becoming public are available to me through the institution. And as an institution funded by the city of Leipzig, this institution has access to digital advertisement spaces in the city center of Leipzig. And these digital spaces are hardly affordable for individual initiatives. So at this time, I worked mainly for subcultural and feminist clients in Leipzig. So I think that aspect also played an important role in the decision to award me the prize. So I wanted to make the space and the resources of the award available again to those who I worked for. And with this in mind, I invited the feminist initiatives to author a classified ad. And I would do the design service free of charge and the free placement via the institution. With this project, it was my ambition to form alliances, or it was our ambition to form alliances to push for political, polemical, fictional, and emancipatory or humorous feminist community demands within this setting of good exchange. I mean, you have to imagine that there is the H&M, Red Bull advertisement coming afterwards, and in between you have something that's sometimes quite political statement, or also a quite funny one. So it was for us really surprising that the city, because they thought it's an art project, they had no look at it and just were checking if there were any external logos and just said like, it's an art project, just do it. And for all of us, it was a huge surprise. And then there was also a moment that I would show it in the gallery again, all the ads together. Yeah. So we come to the end. To sum it up, U for undisciplined. Undisciplined for me is understood as an unpacking of the discipline of graphic design. So it's about questioning the seemingly familiar rules. Like in this workshop, where I asked the students to choose a location and to carry out a visual field recording, as a way to develop their own tools. They were encouraged to explore places with their senses, with their ears, and really make a story out of that. So daily observations, ambient sounds too, could serve as a starting point for a visual story. And I think it's quite important to keep in mind that we still have hands, and that all the digital interfaces we are working in are also really limited. And I think also there's a need like to connect to the things that are around us again. So I was very much inspired for this workshop by the quote that Jean-Michel referenced: "Sight begins with noise." So what happens when we interpret the rules of how we use our tools differently or even disrupt them? What cracks, contradictions, and strategies can be articulated as a result? The term undisciplined is derived from the Glossary of Undisciplined Design, a book that I published in collaboration with the amazing designer and artist and educator Rebecca Stefani in 2021. And I think this book is also it's also a design project that tries to complicate authorship, because we have over 55 contributions from 20 international designers, students, educators, and theorists that also designed most of their contributions themselves to explore new role models, tools, and dissent in graphic design. So you see, there's a way longer list of undisciplined tools that we brought together. And I guess you might think also of some. So I'm really happy to discuss with you afterwards and enjoy the biennial. Thank you so much.